Welcome back, JMic. It is good to see you. This is 2026. We're here. It is the 2026 Dynasty Dummies Rookie Hootenanny presented by Fantasy Cares. That is a mouthful, but we're back to talk rookies. We're back to go through the 2026 class. And JMic, it feels like forever since I have seen you, and it is so good to see your face.
It's been a while, but I am grateful to be here with you, Zach. This is always a treat, mostly because I get to do it with you, but also we get this time to be able to walk through a process that has long been near and dear to us, for you longer than me when it comes to this evaluation piece. And then we get to share our findings and our processes and things that we see with you, the listener, with each of you who are consuming us, whether it is on YouTube or you might be hearing about us via podcast or wherever it may be, whatever the medium is. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's the thing is there are so many places that people could be right now. And whether you're watching this live, whether you stumbled on the Fantasy Cares YouTube channel later, whether you found the Dynasty Dummies podcast, which it's going to start up here again because that's what we do during this time of year, whether you happen upon my rookie reports when Fantasy Cares gets those and you make a donation and get all the film write-ups, like you could be anywhere. Like every podcast, everybody is ramping up to talk rookies right now. And the fact that you're here spending time with us, that means so much and it matters so much. And it's going to be a fun ride. Like it always is when we start to do this. And for those of you uninitiated, unfamiliar, we are going to take some time over the course of the next, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks leading up to the draft to go through this rookie class. But before we do, and we always open up with the Optimus primer, we want to get you prepared for what we do and how we do things, because it may not be exactly what you're used to. Because I think that, and I know it's important to you too, having transparency when you're providing content matters so much. You know, good advice is built on trust and a mutual relationship. And if we just fire things at you and say, believe this, it doesn't work. And so it's important to us that you know that we're not telling you what to think or who to draft or any of that. But what we're doing is telling you what we see. We're not saying we're right. There are going to be times when we are wrong. And we will own that when we are. We will learn from that when we are. But what we want to do is embark on this journey to take a better look at this class. And we want to bring you with us. We want it to be accessible to you. We want to peel back the curtain, show you what we do, how we arrive at the places we do, so that you can do this. You can go through and look at things. You can understand how to evaluate. We don't want this to be a place where it's gate kept. We want to kick that gate down. We want things to be accessible. We want to, and this was Jake Anderson paid me probably the biggest compliment I've ever had in my entire fantasy football life and my doings as an analyst, when back in 2017 I did my very first 4 public consumption write-ups, and he said, man, you made those accessible, and that's exactly what we are looking to do. We want to be on this journey with you. We're not steering the ship. We're all walking side by side.
And as you mentioned, Zach, the best part about this is that we allow people on the inside to decide for themselves, not just about these players, not just about our thoughts, not just about your uh, creative writing degree being put on display. It is the opportunity to have a shared experience and to witness some of the highs, the lows, the fun, the emotional investments that we sometimes make in players that don't quite measure up in the end.
Why you
Uh,
gotta John Kelly me like that? Why?
look, because I'm Ronald Jonesing you like that. That's what we're doing. So we have our wins, we have our struggles, but the beauty of it is we work really hard to again articulate exactly what it is that we see, help other folks be able to see that as opposed to just simply saying something is good or something is bad. uh, we want to be able to give you examples and clarity around what it is exactly that we do. So the fact that we get to do this again, Zach, for another year, and again, you're essentially 10, almost 10 years into this at
Oh,
this point.
yeah, so I got looking at that and I was like, man, I started like dabbling in rookie evaluation in like 2013 and 2014 just for me,
Mhm.
like for my own and started really trying to figure out. So I would buy the Orange Report, the FF Ghost put out, which was an incredible rookie guide. And I would purchase Nick Whalen's Devy Report, and I would look at Matt Waldman's RSP, the rookie scouting portfolio. And I started to kind of figure out that maybe this was something I wanted to do because I loved what these other people were putting out, and they're like obviously Waldman and Nick Whalen and the FF Ghost, and there's so many people in this space that put out such great content, but it's one of those where the advice you often get is be the thing that you think is missing,
Mhm.
and the way people evaluated was just a little different than what I was seeing. And so 2015, I started looking at rookies and we talked about that rookie class. I remember Kyle and I had a big argument over running backs and then it kind of progressed. And in 2017, I'm putting out for public consumption rookie write-ups. That was kind of the beginning of the Hootenanny, where as it's currently constituted. And if you do buy my rookie write-ups, there are going to be a lot of M dashes, but that's because that's how I write. There is zero AI. There is no other influences, and I'm going to take you some places because that's how my brain works. Like you may end up learning something about a past historical figure, and then all of a sudden you may be at like a bubblegum manufacturer, and then you may be somewhere like that's just how it goes. But we're going to have a lot of fun getting where we are. And it is like I've been doing this for public consumption. This will be 9 years of public consumption and 12 years of actually digging in and doing rookies, but refining the process, figuring out exactly how we want to do things. And I think that's probably a good place to jump off, JMic, where you and I, and it's been really great working with you because we've been able to refine this together. Um, but the way we kind of go about watching film and it's not so we're not numbers guys, we're not metrics. I do that enough at work. Like I don't want to math. I have other people. We've got like Tommy Blair and Kent Wyrock and Peter Howard. Makes me sad he's not doing it anymore. But like, there are a whole bunch of people who do numbers, and they're very important in this process. But at the beginning, we're doing film watching and charting, and maybe not quite the way other people do. Because I don't think Like, we don't necessarily get in the weeds as much X's and O's when we're charting. And I think you can, and I think that's valuable, but that's sometimes not accessible. When you start throwing out, spider 2Y banana X, or you're talking a Tampa 2 and figuring out how they're rolling coverage. And that's like, sometimes that gets inaccessible. You get the people who say, "Oh, you never played, so you can't, you don't know this," and that's not how we want to be. And so we start charting, and again, it's a lot of what we can find full games on YouTube. It's a lot of, and this has been beautiful, where the Dynasty nerds have their film room and they do cut ups of players. And that is incredibly helpful when, yeah, oh, they're fantastic. Nerd herd subscriber, like I'll give flowers where they're due. And so what we do is chart and try to be as objective as possible in a subjective. I mean, this is a subjective thing. It certainly is. Um, and JMic, you can probably speak to this from your perspective, but like, to me, it's really important to go back and watch like a full career of some of these players.
Being able to pick up and see not just what a player has become, or rather not what they can simply do, but what the player has become, and in many instances where the players come from, is truly insightful for a process that we know is far more art than science. You can have all of the traits and all of the pieces to what you feel like is the proverbial puzzle, and still come up empty when it comes to the fantasy points or the opportunities or the draft capital or any number of things that don't quite go in the way of a prospect. And so, uh, Zach, as you mentioned, part of this, especially with my background and kind of being a collegiate athlete, playing football in college and watching film a certain way, then as a defensive lineman who is focused on trench play oftentimes, I think one of the fun pieces for me in this process with you over time, going to the Zach Reed School of Hard Knocks Film, is being able to see nuance and being able to pick up tricks of the trade from other respected sources. And you talked a lot about various publications that you've been able to consume over the years. And we could extend that further if wanted to. And I don't want to leave anybody out, and I don't want anybody upset, and probably plenty of people who don't even listen to this program. But being able to look for the other things that folks who are closer to the scouting community or closer to the NFL are looking for, and how that actually transpires when we see games on Sundays and Saturdays and Thursdays and other awkward times when they want to put games on. But being able to consistently refine our process over the years, Zach, has been a real treat to look back and see the spaces where maybe I've dropped the ball, maybe I've let my biases show. Hint, hint, University of Kentucky, many instances. But I do give the disclaimer ahead of time to be able to let people know, hey, this might be a blind spot for me because this is my guy. But all of those things set aside, it's a treat to be able to see these players become something, but also understanding that what we see and how we go about this process, two, I think, critical points. One, there are times, Zach, where you and I aren't going to agree.
Absolutely.
And there are times where we don't necessarily see it the same. However, the respect, the mutual admiration continues to be there, and that kind of supersedes everything that we do, understanding that we've put in the work and that we both have our fair share of spaces where we've done well and haven't done well when it comes to this prospect scouting space. And then the other part of that being, for everybody listening and taking this in, cue the Montel Jordan. This is how we do it. Right? This is how we do it. And we found success and we thoroughly enjoy it. And it's been great to be able to refine this over the years. And so I think that that's something that I feel like people should understand as we continue to walk through the Optimus primer here.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think that it's refining, revising, and you mentioned all of the other people that we borrow from. The smartest people I know are not the people who think they have all the answers. The smartest people I know are the people who know when they don't have the answers, and they find the people that do and ask them. And I think that's what we've tried to do over the years when we refine our processes is figure out where we were wrong and then figure out who has a better way to do it. And so like I talk about charting, like I'm looking at 8 to 14 games of a player over the course of their career. I like to start back at the beginning of a player's career and work my way forward. And I do that for a reason. I do that because, and you mentioned this, players evolve. The game evolves. The NFL is changing right now. Like it's not stagnant. And so watching for a player who can identify a flaw and fix it in college, to me, that is a great portent for the future because the NFL is notoriously not a developmental league, even though it is changing and revising all the time. And so seeing a player being able to identify a flaw and fix it, or at least make it so it's not a hindrance to them. Like if you can net neutral one of your flaws, that's a win. And so seeing players be able to do that, be able to change and adapt over the course of a college career, to me is a really positive check toward going forward with their NFL career. And so even our processes and what we're looking for change. So even though we're evaluating the same traits year over year over year, the NFL cycles, and the NFL gets big, and then defenses get big to combat that, and then the offenses get small. And we're right now in a cycle where I think it was 6 of the top 10 running backs this year were sub 5'11", and a lot of them were sub 200 pounds. So we're back to that like scat back type. I mean, James Cook just ran the league this year. And so we're back to looking for players that do that with the full knowledge that in 2, 3, 4 years, we'll be back looking for the big bruiser, and there are different archetypes to me within positions. And to be able to understand that when we're talking about a receiver, there's a difference between a receiver like Mekhi Lemon, who is smaller, quicker, wins from the slot, does that sort of thing. And then there, a player like Carnell Tate or a player like Jordan Tyson or even Chris Bell is a totally different archetype where, yes, they play the same position. Like it's the same wide receiver designation, but they are not playing the same position at all. And to be able to talk you through that and what we see, and you're going to hear us talk archetypes, and you'll hear us say pass catcher plus at times, which is a running back that we've identified that we think is probably going to start as a pass catcher, but has enough chops to go and be a lead back if the situation arises. So you'll hear us talk about things like that. You'll hear us talk about guys who are angle breakers and can do things in the open field that other players can't. You're going to hear us talk when we talk wide receivers, guys who can beat zones. We're going to talk about guys who get vertical separation, which is going up and high pointing. So instead of having separation where you can see it horizontally on the field, it's a player who is open even when he's not open. He can go up and get that and almost like a basketball player rebounding a ball, box out and make a play. And so you're going to hear us talk about things like this, and we're going to explain them. So don't get too turned up about trying to follow along, because that's part of being accessible. Is when I watch film, I'm watching so much about movement and thought process and understanding. And so, like, to me, there are things that translate. A wide receiver who can separate at the stem, who can make that plant and get leverage, get the defender going one way and then come back. I see Allen Iverson. I see I see that crossover. I see the hesitation. You see a player make like a double move, a slant and go. And to me, that's like an inside out hesitation and go. And so, like, I'm seeing things that translate across sports and movement that translates across sports. And so I think and this will be kind of overarching. It's not just about movement, but the human brain is a pattern recognition supercomputer. Like, that's what your brain is. And so to see these traits that translate, and we don't like to do comps, or at least I do. I hate comps. And I know that the consumers, the people who listen to these shows, the people who read the write-ups, it's comfortable to get a comp. It's comfortable to say, Jordan Tyson is Drake London. That's comfortable. But I don't think that does a service to you. And I also don't think it does a service to the player. But what we will talk about is traits that we see between players. And so if I see a player that is really great at separating against the zone, you're going to hear me mention Cooper Kupp. You're going to hear me mention Juju Smith-Schuster. You're going to hear me mention Justin Jefferson, because those players are totally different players. All three of those players had vastly different NFL careers, but those pieces that made them successful are similar. And so that's kind of what we look at. And again, when we're charting those 8 to 14 games, full games or full game cut-ups. We're not watching highlights. Drives me nuts. Look, highlights are great. They're cool. Like, we're all excited. But those give you the ceiling. Those give you the pie in the sky. And we love to dream this time of year. We love it. But in order to build that skyscraper, you got to have a foundation. And to me, the foundation is what a guy does game in and game out. And so when we chart, you can see what a play, we plus minus, good vision on the inside, a plant cut, break tackle, contact balance. And then the next play, you might get contact balance, but he was hesitant behind the line of scrimmage. So there's a negative. So when we're done charting, you can look at this and see what a player did game to game, week to week, year to year, and see what this player is, what this player has become. And then you could put those highlights on top and see what a player could be if you build off this foundation. And I think it's really important to attack things from, again, we want to dream. We want that. We want that up. You're going to hear upside so many times during draft season. Everybody wants that. But I think that the upside stems from the foundation. You're not suspended up here. Like a player doesn't play up there all the time. A player plays here and then has moments where they're up in the stratosphere.
Could you imagine picking your friends based off of their IG reels? I feel like that's what watching highlight tapes are. It's just essentially you went on Instagram, saw every post, and was like, yeah, I want to follow this person because this is where it's at.
I mean, I can put together a pretty good mixtape of my basketball playing days, and you would think that I was okay. Right now, I can barely even stand up out of a chair. You wouldn't want to draft me.
So, Zach, I think before we move forward, uh, in giving clarity on what the weeks will look like, more process things when it comes to how we roll this out, and obviously you've given people a great idea as to what to expect from our own analysis. I think one thing that's really important to answer, and I think that it's something that you and I do a good job of addressing year over year, and this is highlighted, I think, for me, in making sure that I'm coming into our process usually late November, December, when we're watching the majority of the film that we're watching. It's important for us to be able to identify the spaces maybe that we feel like we could have done better last year, not necessarily just with a specific player, but when we think process, when we think things that we're looking for, when we're trying to identify, okay, hey, this year in 2026, I believe that I am a sharper or improved, or my process has improved because of this. What would you say if there's any one specific thing, or if there is a player that you can point to help you illustrate maybe how you've come along over the last 12 months in growing as an evaluator? What would you point to?
I think that the trap that I fall into a lot of times is I do my evaluation, and I think I have a pretty good handle on this player. Sometimes situation matters as much as the evaluation of the player. And Tet McMillan is a great example of this. And we talked about this last year a lot, where Tet McMillan can succeed. And he did. He succeeded. The way he was able to succeed and the path to success for Tet McMillan was a very narrow one. But it happened. And I think that the reevaluation process, and maybe we should start doing something where we reattack things after the draft, because I think that matters a lot. Because we have data points along the way. So, our initial film work is a data point, and then you get the combine. Some people think that's a bigger data point than I do, but it is a data point, and it is especially valuable for players who play at a lower level, because then you see that they have the athleticism to compete at the NFL level. And so instead of being worried about whether or not someone can play, you get that. Then you get the draft. And so you get draft capital, which matters a lot. But also, I think that maybe we, and especially I, need to do a better job of reassessing after the draft the situation. Because somebody like Tet McMillan, to me, landed in that, and this is so weird that history echoes, but landed in that Carolina Panther, big body wide receiver with no one else around. Devin Funchess, blew up, and like that. It was so weird to me to watch that again, and I should have seen it. I saw it eventually, but it was far too late. And
Too late.
So and I think that is the reevaluation process for me, because we do so much. Like, we talk about this being a marathon of, we're doing rookie work and we're doing all that, and then you have the draft and it's a sprint. But I think that also you need to understand that the sprint doesn't end when your rookie draft ends, that there is more, and so we get these, and we've had conversations about value before, but there are types of value where, right now we're dreaming on these guys. So you have like potential value, and then they come into the league and you have in season the points value, and then you have the future value where you have a guy that you're like, okay, Emeka Egbuka is going to be in the league for 8-10 years. He is a wide receiver 2, but has room to grow, potentially be the JSN type role. So you're trying to factor in the career value. And I think sometimes we forget once the rookies get drafted, and especially myself, I'm guilty of, there's still work to do, and so your rookie evaluation isn't done. And we got Raymond Reese in the chat, and this is a really nice question. How high would you have rated Tet after his situation was known? And higher than I did before, because I had him at wide receiver 6. He was in that second tier for me. And this was I think the thing sometimes that gets missed is the class is different. And so this was a down wide receiver class for me. We didn't really love any of the wide receivers. The wide receiver 1 for me was a cornerback. And so it was an odd, and also when we do the rankings, they change so much with draft capital. So Ricky White disappeared because of draft capital. Trey Harris hung on, but like you weren't as excited. Egbuka probably got a bump. Tet obviously got a bump. And so, the things changed with the data points. But yeah, I mean, he probably would have been wide receiver 3, like once I reevaluated and did that. And so I'm a lot more comfortable with Tet McMillan as a wide receiver 3 than I am as a wide receiver 6 pre-draft. And so I think that's one of the things that, and I also think that sometimes it's hard for me to get around archetypes and see around that corner. And that's what we need to do. Like as evaluators, you're not just evaluating the talent, but you're also evaluating how the talent is going to fit in the league, the way the league is moving. And so sometimes getting stuck on, hey, this is a big high point X receiver, it fails you because sometimes a big high point X receiver is what a team needs.
Zac, I think that you're hitting on something that's going to be wildly valuable, not just for us, obviously, but for the folks who consume our content, this podcast, this videos, whatever it may be, because thinking through a post-draft show or sets of shows to help us re-rack to a degree, and not even necessarily so that we can have clean lines that say this is where I have this person now. Like I think that's good, and having the rankings post draft is a worthwhile and obviously necessary thing for us as we enter our rookie drafts and things of that nature. But moreover, I think that it will do us a benefit to be able to help again look back and say this is where we were with who this person was as a prospect. So simply because they went in the first round, yes, I need to acknowledge that they went in the first round and that there was a team in the NFL that was willing to take this player over a whole bunch of other people. So that's worth acknowledging. And that doesn't mean that I'm tossing all of my thoughts or points of the evaluation out the window because of it. And I think that not that he speaks to this point, but similar to you, I think I had Tetaroa wide receiver 3, I think grade wise, when thinking through Travis Hunter as my 1 and Jaden Higgins. I was a big Jaden Higgins fan. But when Tetaroa goes first round and we understand the environment in Carolina, understanding that the only way that offense is going to be any sort of functional is, one, Bryce Young has to actually like play not terrible. And in doing so, that means that Tetaroa likely has to be a player who is who finds himself early and becomes someone that they can rely on. And so being able to understand, okay, I may not love the player, and I think that there are some inconsistencies. However, what he can become and kind of what he becomes for an offense now lends to a different picture than I was seeing. And like you said, and I love this point too, and I'll get out of the way, being able to see around the corner in that there are so many times I remember in the past where I was not confident or comfortable in certain archetypes when thinking through running backs, and specifically maybe smaller backs or even like pass catcher plus backs, where they fantastic out of the backfield when thinking through the pass game, but not necessarily dazzling or doing anything that I find wildly impressive in the run game, i.e., taking you back to 2022. There's a man by the name of Kenneth Walker III. Big fan of Kenneth Walker III. He was my highest graded guy, right there, just a half tick above Brees Hall. And I was really excited about Ken Walker because I like what he did on the ground. Well, he offers nothing in the pass game. And as he consistently got injured, we watched his role be something that wasn't going to expand because there was no plus, there was no upside to it.
Right.
Conversely, a guy that I know you really liked a lot and even mentioned earlier in this episode, James Cook, was someone that I very much could not see around the corner. I could not envision that there would be an opportunity for him to be any more than a third down bonus back. And it wasn't because obviously that his pass catching was obviously a positive, and we saw that he was shifty at Georgia and all these other things. But I couldn't. I guess in the midst of even thinking through, okay, how do I dream well here, or how do I see outside of my own biases? I couldn't get to the place of getting him up to the place or getting him up the slots past all of my previous biases within the actual class, the Keontae Ingrams and some other folks, right? That some names that were like that have since passed and gone on to greener life pastures. And what do they say? The NCAA commercials, they're going pro in something other than sports. A lot of those kinds of guys, and so I think that's something that's been in my mind, but it didn't really hit home until this year as I've been watching some things, because we're going to get to some players here in a couple weeks, Zach, that very much are okay. I see the vision now. I see the path. And so I'm excited to be able to see how those things fall into place.
Well, and I think that's the piece of this, that if you and I mean that we are the Dynasty Dummies. So we fully acknowledge that there is a great wealth of knowledge that we don't possess, but we want to. Like we're here on this journey to try to learn more. And so if you are willing to keep an open mind and willing to understand and look back, I think the most important part of any evaluation, and not just fantasy football, but life, is when you make a mistake, that's not the end of the road. If you continue making the same mistake, you've kind of cut off that avenue. But if you will recognize the mistake, figure out why it happened, and that's the analysis part, and then figure out what you can do to put yourself on a path that gets around that mistake, I think you're doing so much more for yourself and putting yourself in a positive direction. And like, we talk about this a lot, where like we're going to be wrong. And I've said it at the beginning, like we're going to be wrong. I am absolutely going to be wrong on players and evaluations and things in my life. But if we narrow those windows, if we go back and look and correct or at least change trajectory on what we were wrong, and figure out the process that took us to being wrong and clean that up, we're going to avoid those places we've failed before. And we're going to learn from them, and we're going to get better. And we talk about this a lot, mitigating failure. Like, that's what we're doing. The best analysts fail at this 60%, 40% of the time. Like, they're successful 60% of the time. And I think that, and this was Tommy Blair who kind of kept me in check, and Peter Howard too, where they asked about my historical hit rate on players that I drafted. And it's not quite the same thing as the analysis that we've done, because when you're in a draft, you don't necessarily have the ability to take every player that you think is great. But like, looking back on my historical draft record, and this isn't to pat myself on the back, it is better than I thought it was. But part of that is because we do so much work in our film evaluation, and because we evolve and change when we make mistakes. When we see John Kelly initiate contact and try to run through every single person's face, like, maybe it worked for Marshawn, but like, that's not happening for every single player. And when a running back does it in college, it looks cool. It looks great. But the defense that they're playing against may have 1-2 NFL players on it. When you get to the next level, that defense has 11 NFL players on it. And guess what? There are 11 more ready to come in and fill the gaps. So every single player you're up against is an NFL caliber player. And so you may not get away with the same things that you did. And so to be able to step back and evaluate, and like, we're still evaluating the same traits year over year. Like, maybe I'll go through that real quick. But like, when we talk about running backs, we're looking for the same traits year over year, even though the type of running back changes that we're looking for. So like, we're still looking at vision and the ability to see a hole open up, and the ability to kind of navigate that line of scrimmage. We're still looking for elusiveness. We're still looking for their ability to cut away from traffic. We're looking for their ability to break tackles. We're looking for that power and move the pile. We're looking for patience, allowing blocks to set up. We're looking for balance, both in their cutting, but also when they're taking a hit, and have the ability to kind of glance that blow and continue on. We're looking for pass catching, because that is so important. A target is worth almost 3 times as much as a carry. A target, not even a catch, just a target. The ball is thrown at is worth 3 times a handoff. We're looking for their ability to run inside between the tackles, and we're looking for their ability to get outside of the tackles. And so, sure, like, all of those things are important, and different players can succeed in different ways. And so the entire makeup of a player, the aggregate, a player may not be elusive, but man, if he can break tackles, if he can let his blockers set up and have that patience and vision, and the ability to cut and see angles in space, you may not need to be elusive. Like, there are different ways to succeed. And so it's really, to me, interesting. And we also, again, we talk about the archetypes. Like, there are guys who are going to be grinders. They're going to be between the tackles. It's really strange. And I texted you the other day about Terrian Stewart, who is like 5'8", like 215, maybe 211. Like, he's a little bowling ball guy. And like, it's so weird to watch him run because he'll run between the tackles and he'll like bounce off players and like there's no way a player of this size should be succeeding the way he does. But man, there are myriad ways to have success and a myriad ways to evaluate players to figure out whether or not that's going to be successful at the next level.
And I think before, and I'm not sure if you were going to give a heads up on the wide receiver piece or not, Zach, but I do think that one thing to acknowledge also is, and again, I think a fault of mine that I think is important to bear out. Just because you don't necessarily see a player as being a 3-down whatever, right? That's not necessarily a sole reason or a defining reason as to not, or as to overlook that player in our rookie drafts and in our processes, because we look up year in and year out and guys of varying sizes and varying roles are getting opportunities to produce in our fantasy lineups again, year in and year out. And we can look back at shout out to our guy Matt Foreman, who was big on Tyler Algier coming out, and I was like, I'm not there. And again, someone who found a role, was wildly productive in his role, and when essentially, especially this past 2 seasons, being someone who consistently was finding opportunity and finding fantasy points. We're looking at the likes of again, even a Devin Achan, someone that I was a big fan of, but then you're scared to death of what is it really going to look like for a guy who is that small but that fast but really talented, and what do the opportunities look like? And I could throw out names left and right, but I think it's important just to acknowledge that these guys, if they're talented enough in the thing, just because they're not the total package doesn't mean that we need to be overlooking the things they do incredibly well.
And I think the other cool thing is we're seeing a shift in NFL coaching to a lot of innovators. And so you're not just seeing Adrian Peterson, take the ball 300 times and run it into the line of scrimmage and hope that he breaks free. You're seeing, you look at the top of PPR running backs last year, and you're seeing McCaffrey, and you're seeing Bijan Robinson, you're seeing Gibbs. Those are guys that you get out in space. Let them do something. You're seeing Jonathan Taylor, who is more in that Adrian Peterson, like run it a ton of times and then break one because he's got that home run speed. You're seeing Achan, you're seeing James Cook, you're seeing Chase Brown, who was a player that we identified as a priority second-round pick because he had the ability to be a 3-down back. It was the pass catcher plus role. We saw the same thing with Kyron Williams, where we liked him a lot pre-draft, pre-combine. Everybody fell off him. So, all right, we got an evaluation that we like. If he's there in the second round, grab him, because those players are interesting. And then you've got Derrick Henry, who is just like this incredible piece of humanity. And so there are now coaches innovating to adapt to the players far more now than they used to, even 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. You're seeing a lot more coaches look at the players they have and utilize them in a way that allows them to succeed. Or you're seeing coaching staffs and GMs, in the instance of McCaffrey, where they were like, this guy fits what we want to do. Let's go get him. And so I think that now more than ever, it's important to evaluate the talent of these players coming out, because far more often the NFL is putting them in situations to use that talent, which is fun from a fantasy perspective, and also a place where I think you can glean an edge.
Because it's not going away. That part is not going away. People are having to be more and more creative in how they're leveraging these athletes, these weapons for the benefit of their teams. And we're watching hot seats get hotter quicker, which means that these guys are going to be getting opportunities. And when they get their opportunities, what are the things that we've seen to be able to see them have the success that positions them to produce at this level?
And that, I think, is a cool thing about what we do is it's valuable year over year over year. So you could go back right now and watch what we talked about for rookie evaluations, especially in the running back position.
Yes.
And find players that we thought were talented who haven't had their shot yet, because that is buy low and then reap the benefits when they start scoring. I mean, it was, Chase Brown was one of those players. Kyron Williams was one of those players. I think Blake Corum has potential to be one of those players. Like, there's so many players that we've identified that we like the talent, and you're just waiting for that situation. I like to say, if the back in front of them wins an all expenses paid vacation to Tahiti for like 8 weeks, all of a sudden you've got gold. You've got a player who can be a startable running back all the way up to a potential week-to-week running back one.
No question about it. Zach, I think two things are probably really important for us to be able to continue to table set, and before we put the episode to bed. One, and I think that you say this really well typically when it comes to how running backs and wide receivers operate differently in terms of their opportunity, which I think you kind of touched on, the elevators versus escalators kind of a deal. And maybe that, I don't know if that's going to be specifically for the episode that we'll have upcoming, but I think that's one thing that probably is important for people to just hear and understand, so that when you get to it, it's not necessarily foreign.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, because of roster construction. And
Yes.
You're going to hear people talk about roster cloggers. To me, a roster clogger is often a wide receiver because of the way the positions function. A running back, because there's only one in a backfield on any given play most of the time. I mean, every now and then you'll see somebody throw in a fullback or something like that. But by and large, there is a running back getting the majority of the touches. And so if a running back goes down, the next man who comes in is going to see most of that volume. And so that is like an elevator. You step in the elevator, you hit the button to go to the top floor, bloop, you go up to the top floor and you're there. So it's a 1-for-1 replacement with wide receivers. And this is why a wide receiver sometimes ends up being a roster clogger, is the way targets are earned is based on talent. And Peter Howard did some really great research and then had to refight that battle again with the great influx of the COVID years, where you had a whole bunch of new people and he had to fight that battle again. But targets are earned and owned by the receivers, and the way receivers function is you have 2 or 3 wide receivers on the field at a time. The targets are being split up mostly by talent there. So when a receiver gets injured and somebody comes in, this is like an escalator. They come in at the bottom and things shift up, but the players who are already in front of them tend to shift up. It's why you saw Michael Wilson have a great stretch when there are injuries to that wide receiving core, and it wasn't whoever snuck in from the bottom. And I think that that's important when we talk about rostership and positional rostership, because not only are running backs coming in and getting that work, they're easy to identify, and oftentimes you can get running backs cheaply, and we I just talked about this. If you go back and look at running backs that were identified as talented that haven't got a shot, people are already starting to give up on them for the next big thing. They're already looking at this class and trying to figure out who they're going to pick in this 2026 class to churn out that running back that they drafted last year, didn't get a shot. So you have the ability to mine a little bit of value, the ability to pick at one of those edges, and we like to say the edges by definition are not in the middle. You have to go to the outside. You have to think outside of what everybody else is doing to find those edges. And if you think about running backs instead of running back one, running back two, running back, if you think about running back as trying to find weeks of running back one and running back two, they're easy to identify because they are in that elevator. So, when a player gets hurt, all of a sudden, now that next man up is getting identifiable targets in a week, so you know when to start them. It's not like a wide receiver where if they come in and you get the random touchdown throw, or you get a play where there's a broken play and the cornerback was in the wrong spot and the safety didn't roll over. Like, those are tough to identify before they happen. But with running back, it's so valuable to be able to identify and start them and get that running back 1 week. Even if it's only 1 week, it's still a win. If you spend a third round pick and got a running back 1 week, that's a win. If you got 5 of them, that's even better. Like, that's, to me, an easy way to attack drafts that gives you performance during the season. It gives you that points value instead of just dreaming on a wide receiver, hoping they eventually put it together.
Hang on, Ray Davis. Hang on. Hang in there.
He's so talented. He's so talented.
Talk about it. Zac, last piece that I think is important for folks to be able to grasp. What, obviously, for the folks who have been riding with us, been doing this with us since forever, since even before I came on the program several years back, for the folks who have been knee deep in this with us and know the progress and know the process, they've come to know our rhythm and what to expect in that regard. But for the folks who maybe are new to the fantasy care space, who have been gracious hosts to us and our endeavors here, to the folks who may be new to the program, who maybe you just recently rubbed elbows with out in Las Vegas, or whomever it may be, right? Whomever may be new to the program, again, thank you. We appreciate having you. What can folks expect schedule-wise from, or not even just schedule-wise, but however you'd like to expound from this duo?
Yeah, so we are going to start off. I think we agreed with this. With this class, we're going to start off with running backs. And so we're going to go the next couple of weeks, we will do running back evaluations where we'll take 5 or 6 guys a week. And I think 6 is usually what we tend to do. And we'll talk about them. We'll kind of give you the 30,000 foot view, and then we'll dig down a little bit, and then we'll give you, okay, this is where we have them ranked so far in this class. Then we will go and talk about wide receivers, and we'll do 2 weeks of 6 wide receivers. We'll give you the same thing. We'll give you the 30,000 foot view. We'll dig down into each individual profile. Then we'll give you where we think they rank. And then we will do a quarterbacks and tight ends show, because one, nobody knows what they're doing at all with quarterbacks. So we're going to watch you and give you our best eval, and tight ends. Nobody wants to listen to us talk about tight ends, even though we Harold Fannin you last year, and you're welcome. But like, we'll do those. Will probably be 4 or 5 of each of those positions. So now we're 5 weeks in, and then it gets fun. This is the audience participation portion of the show, because if we have not talked about a player that you want to hear about, that's the time. And give us those players early and often. If we're already talking about them, no harm, no foul. But if it's somebody that we weren't looking at, they weren't on our radar yet, we want to be functional for you. So if there are players that you want to hear about, if you want our evaluation of a player, you have to let us know, and we will do the catch-all shows where we watch players that you give to us that you want to hear about, that you want us to put eyes on. And to me, that's fun. And it's really the crux of what we are trying to do. Is this isn't our show. This is our show with you included in that, because it is a back and forth. It is we're trying to help you navigate these classes. And so whatever we can do to best serve you is how we want to approach this. And so that's kind of our rhythm and flow. Is we'll talk a couple weeks running backs, we'll talk a couple weeks of wide receivers. We didn't even talk about the how we do the categories and the eval, the points and everything. But we do a 10 score. So it's 10 total points in each category, and then by half points. So that's how we get our aggregate score. I don't know that we necessarily talk much about the aggregate score, but that's just kind of how we get to our rankings and how we do our grading system. And it's been the same since 2017. So I have I can go back and give you historical ranks of say if you wanted to look at historical wide receiver grades. I can go back and tell you that I have CeeDee Lamb as my number one wide receiver overall since 2017. I can tell you Justin Jefferson is my second wide receiver. I can tell you that I had Marvin Harrison at third. So there's a big, there's a fail. I'll own up to that. He hasn't succeeded like I thought he would, even though he's a big post-up guy. AJ Brown, hey, Rondell, he's right there, tied with Jamar Chase. So, like, we have historical context. We have the ability to go back, recognize our successes, recognize our failures. We did see it with Justin Jefferson, boys. So we can do that, and I think that's valuable, because I think being able to go back and look historically is important, because not all classes are created equal. Yes. And we've talked about that. I know we talked about that a lot with last year's class, because it was asymmetrically good. There were a lot of running backs, but it wasn't a good class. And when we look at classes, to me, a good class is multiple quarterbacks, because primarily we're playing Superflex, and then high-end players in a couple of others. So if you can get 7 or 8 players deep in a class, I think you are going to be really successful. And if you look at, I think 7 is the average number of hits. And Peter Howard did a really good study on this. But an average class, there are 7 players who have top 24 seasons. Average is 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, a couple of wide receivers, and a tight end. 2017, amazing class, had 12 players who hit that. 2019, 3. Okay. Yeah. And so, like, when we talk about this class, you're going to hear me say 2019 some. You're going to hear me say 2022 some, which means that's not a great class. But also understand that there can be great players that we, capital L, love in a class, even though it's not a great class.
Yes. Oh man, I'm already just so excited. Just thinking through this. Zach, before we go, this is the absolute last thing, and I'll be quick. We're gonna play a quick game. I'm only gonna give you 3 questions. Quick game of this or that. Teammate edition of players in this year's class. You don't have to say where you have them ranked. All you have to do is say who has the higher film grade. And I think I want to reemphasize with everyone, everything that we share with you is our film grades of these players. So in the coming weeks, when you hear how we have these guys rated, these are the grades that we have of how we rated their film, how they graded out with the plus minus that Zach has talked about, and how that looks in the aggregate. And again, we can do that class over class, and be able to compare year over year in that regard. But let's have a little bit of fun, Zach, before we go. You don't, and listen, I'm cutting you off because you don't get the opportunity to give any context.
This is hard for me.
I
it's
know.
Hard for me. And that so this is inside radio real quick. This is how you know JMic is an absolutely incredible host, because he is like the one person who can rein me in. So I'll play nice.
All right, I respect it. First, we're actually going to start at the wide receiver position in this class. National champion, Indiana Hoosiers, Omar Cooper Jr. or Elijah Surratt?
I've got Surratt.
Okay. I've got Cooper. This will be fun. Let's switch over to the running back position, and we'll actually stay with the Hoosiers, not the highest rated running backs. And I'm not even sure if you've watched them both, Zach. But who would you go with between Kalen Black and Roman Hemby?
I haven't watched them yet.
Okay.
I gotta get it. I gotta get there.
We'll leave that a mystery, man. Last one, a couple of guys who people thought they might have seen in the 2025 class, but here they are in the 2026 class. We're going to Penn State. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen.
This one's Katron.
Katron.
How, like, I know, like, it feels like it shouldn't be, but I think it is.
All right, this is good. Okay, so we've got one agreement, we've got one disagreement, and we've got a hung jury.
TBD.
So we will, here it is. Zach, I'm excited to be back in the saddle with you. I'm excited to be able to get back behind the microphone, talk through what the things that we've been seeing. Obviously, things that we've texted about in small doses, but we save so much of for this time because I think it's just a delight to both of us. Again, thank you to Fantasy Cares. Zach, thank you again for allowing me to be able to join you in this endeavor. I'm excited. I'm just pumped. I'm humbled. I'm excited, and I'm excited to be able to ride with all the folks who are going to take this journey with us over the coming weeks and months.
I can't wait. And it's been really fun to see like the excitement about the Hootenanny being back, especially since it's like a limited run, 10 show, 12 show a year. And like people are already back and excited. Like that's fun. Like that's what really makes it for me. Before we jump out, I want to thank Fantasy Cares. I know like I'm a Fantasy Care board member now, but even before Fantasy Cares has been so good to us, and it's a lovely partnership that we have where we're able to donate film notes and make some donations, make some money for Fantasy Cares, but they also give us this beautiful platform. And shout out to Fantasy Cares like for back-to-back wins as the FSGA Fantasy Sports Business of the Year at the FSGA conference again this year. So that's 2 years in a row, Business of the Year. And I think it's a great business model because it's the entire community doing good. It's really hard to beat that. And you guys are awesome. We want to thank you for being here riding with us. There are a million different places you could be, a bunch of different things you could be doing. There are hundreds of different podcasts you could be listening to, people you could be listening to talk about this stuff. And so it means a lot to us, to JMic and myself, that you're riding with us. This is going to be fun. I do not think this is a beautiful class. I think this is a subpar class, but I think that there are some fun pieces, and we are going to have a good time digging through, doing our dance, striking up the band, getting the Hootenanny rolling. So next week, we will be talking running backs. We'll have to figure out which 6 we're going to do. And we're going to kick this thing off for real. So appreciate you hanging with us. Hopefully, the Optimus Primer gave you a little something to think about. We want to be a piece in your puzzle. We don't want to give you the answer, but we want to help you find the tools to find that answer. And so with that, JMic is at JMic Check. I am at Tacit Assassin 13. Dynasty Dummies are at Dynasty Dummies. Fantasy Cares is at fantasycares.org. We really appreciate you rolling with us. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening. And now I got to press this button, do a little media asset thing. There's so many things. Bob has so many things going on here.
What are you doing, Bob?
Just got to click this, and then we're out.